This is a 2.4 million peso Toyota Fortuner. Wow. If Maxus is the house that fried chicken built, then the 7-seat PPV class is the house that the Fortuner built. Well, not really built, more like popularized. When Toyota launched this in 2005, it became a very, very popular model in our market. It instantly became the class leader. And only one time, I think, was it ever beaten in its category, and that was in 2009 with the Mitsubishi Montero Sport, and even then, just for a short time. This model, well, if you can play Spot the Innova, you can definitely play Spot the Fortuner. 2021 is a very exciting year for the 7-seat PPV class. The Montero Sport is fairly new, the Everest has a few new features, and then you have the new Terra coming in, as well as an all-new MUX just waiting to make its presence felt. Now, Toyota can't take that sitting down. They have to do something, which is why last year they launched the 2021 Toyota Fortuner with a facelift and a lot of upgrades. And the one we're looking at here is a top-of-the-line one, the LTD. I know a lot of you really like the look of the 2016 to 2020 Fortuner, but I really wasn't one of them. I found that the way Toyota designed the front of that vehicle, they put in a lot of details, a lot of chrome, and a lot of different shapes and whatnot, but they didn't really try to get it and bring it together in one cohesive package. They fixed that with the 2021 version. For the Cube models, actually it already looks pretty good, and it looks even better in this 2021 LTD. Well, that's definitely a very sporty looking sport utility vehicle, heavy-handed as that may be. Just look at that front aero bumper. It looks really neat. Toyota doesn't do that very often, and it looks really, really sporty. The headlights, I like those. I love the black trim with the super white LEDs and the way it all contrasts with the white body. Now, speaking of body, this is the white pearl two-tone option. So meaning the white pearl, that's a little bit extra on the price tag, as well as the blacked out A, B, C, and D pillars, as well as the roof, which is actually strange because car makers, when they black out a roof, it's usually to conceal a glass roof, which this one does not have. I really like that Toyota went chrome minimum with the Fortuner LTD. The only chrome you'll find here, the door handles and the emblem in the front and the emblem in the back. That is it. They want to preserve the sporty look of this vehicle. There are two things that I really want to point out. The first is fairly minor, and it's the two-tone look of the vehicle. Toyota never engineered the Fortuner to be a two-tone vehicle, and I can tell by looking at the A-pillar. See how the white goes up to here? That does not look very natural to me. And it tells me that the black was really more of an afterthought, something they want to add on. And that's something that continues with a lot of the features inside the vehicle, which I'll show you later. The second, and perhaps the more significant one, is actually the wheel design. It's too small, it's too conservative for a vehicle that looks as good as this. If anything, the Fortuner 2016 V that I drove back then actually has better wheels and would be a better fit for this vehicle. And another thing, the Toyota Fortuner Legender, yes, the Thailand version, they have the same wheel design as this one. But the difference is their wheel is 20 inches. Ours is 18. What gives, Toyota? So here's the interior of the Fortuner LTD, and we can tell you at first glance there are a lot of new things to talk about and are exclusive for this variant. The most obvious is the leather. You've got black and you've got red, and then also red stitching. That's a pretty nice touch. There's mood lighting here, pretty neat. It's a predominantly black interior, so you have black pillars and a black ceiling and black, actually, other details. The seats, these are power adjustable and both come with cooling. You can control it right there. Looking at the dashboard, you've got JBL speakers that is exclusive for the LTD. Those speakers, all 9 of them are driven by a new multimedia unit right here. It's a touchscreen, but it does have buttons on the sides. It's a nicer touch compared to before. The steering wheel looks largely the same, but it does have paddle shifters. It has a new trim here. It has cruise control, actually adaptive cruise control. The radar control is right here. It also has lane departure warning. All these features are part of the Toyota Safety Sense package, which is exclusive to the LTD. This LTD comes with an automatic climate control unit, the 4x4 system. There is a 4x2 as well, but not this one. Your transmission is a 6-speed automatic and it has 3 modes, Eco, Normal, and Sport. We'll play with that a little bit later. Other features of the LTD: parking sensors, a motorized tailgate, a 360-degree camera, the cool box right there, which is a normal feature of many Fortuners now. You have 7 airbags for safety, anti-lock brakes, traction control, and all that. Multiple USB ports, and even the kitchen sink. Well, that's a wireless charger, but you get the idea. Toyota crammed in as many features as they can into the top-of-the-line LTD to justify the $2.4 million price tag. But I do have to be very critical about some of the features in the Fortuner LTD, primarily the 360-degree camera system. Normally, when you put it into reverse, it should pop out. But no, you have to press this button here for about 2 seconds and then release it to get it to pop out. And even then, I didn't get to do that. There you go. So what's happening here is that I don't think the 360-degree camera is native or fully integrated into this system, which is why it needs a separate button. Even when you press a touchscreen, it does not cycle through the views. To do that, you press this again to go through the different views. And even then, there is no reverse view, which is strange. So that's something they really need to work on to be able to improve how this functions. The second is the JBL speaker system. Yes, the audio quality is actually pretty nice, but this one is a 9-speaker unit. There are other markets, Thailand, that gets 11. So why do we only get 9? That could have been improved as well. What Toyota should have really worked on is the entire dashboard. It can seem a bit cluttered, especially when you look at other competitor models like the Montero Sport or even the Ford Everest. So the back seat of the Fortuner LTD, it's actually pretty comfortable. Good leg room. You got armrest with 2 cup holders, 2 USB ports, 2 hooks. In terms of headroom, it could be better because I'm 5'6" and there's only maybe 2 inches left to the ceiling. Looking out in front, it's actually okay. Good visibility there. There are 2 AC vents there for either side, and you've got your AC controls for the rear right here. And mind you, this is also the reason why this can't have a sunroof, because all that is in the way. So the third row of the Fortuner, in terms of space, it's actually quite okay. The width is good because, again, the platform of the Fortuner is actually shared with the Innova, and the third row of the Innova and the Fortuner are practically the same. And the Innova's version, it has a seating capacity of 3 right here in the back. So for 2, it's all right. In terms of knee room, once you split everything up, it's not too bad, especially for short distances. This can be quite comfortable. You may need to tone down the AC so it's not too noisy here in the back. The only real issue here, though, is actually the headroom, because even with my height, my head is already touching the ceiling. Now, the Fortuner has a motorized tailgate. You can activate it via that button or via your key. In this one, these tubes are actually the ones that activate the tailgate. So they have a bit of wiring here, so that means there's some kind of electrical device inside to do all that. Nevertheless, when you look at the cargo space with all 3 rows up and occupied, there's not much space left. It has about 15 inches of depth and about 51 inches of width. If there's no one sitting there, you can fold up the 3rd row quite easily because these are spring-loaded, so it's kind of a one-touch thing. Now, with the 3rd row up, you can see more of the cargo space of the Toyota Fortuner. With that, in this configuration, the length goes up to 47 inches up to the back of the middle row. That can go up even more if you fold and tumble that middle row to give you even more space inside. The issue I have here, though, is the rear seats, when they're folded up in this manner, they consume quite a bit of cargo space in the cargo area. Between those 2 points, the seats, it's about 31 or 32 inches depending on where you measure. It's actually quite restrictive compared to a lot of its competitor models in the market. Case in point, the Ford Everest. They engineered a way to have the rear seats and the middle row fold fully flat, giving you a flat load space. That's a big advantage. Toyota couldn't do that in the Fortuner because of the architecture going on underneath here, particularly the spare tire. And speaking of spare tire, if you do get a Fortuner LTD, be sure to get a nice quality lock for that spare, because that's a very popular thing to steal. If you've noticed, I've been very critical of the Toyota Fortuner, and rightfully so. There are a lot of expectations for a vehicle of this price and the Fortuner line in particular. But if there's one aspect I will not criticize them for, it's in the engine department, which is surprising. That's usually where we normally criticize Toyota. But in the case of the Fortuner LTD, they gave us what we wanted: more power. The engine of this Fortuner is still the 1GD FTV, the 2.8 liter that they used from 2016 up to 2020. But the difference is they unlocked a bit more performance from the engine. It now makes 204 metric horsepower. That's a 15% bump compared to before. In terms of torque, it's up from 450, now it's 500 Newton meters. That's an 11% bump. It may not sound like much, but you really can feel it, and it really does make a difference overall with the vehicle. One of the bigger differences actually is in the torque band. It's a bit longer, from 1600 to 2800. I wish I can show you the acceleration of the Fortuner, but as you can see right now, I'm stuck in traffic, specifically on EDSA. But no matter, it's actually a good opportunity to show off the 6-speed automatic gearbox in the Fortuner. It has 3 modes: Eco, Normal, and Sport. Right now, I'm in Normal mode. It's shifting fine. But in Eco mode, it changes the way the gearbox works. It makes it a bit more economical by holding on, by being more conservative with regards to the shifting. If you put it into Sport mode, then it becomes a bit more liberal when it comes to downshifting. So if you step on the throttle a bit more, it's going to want to go a bit more because it'll kick down a gear or 2 right away. And it also holds onto the gears a little bit longer. Normal is a mix of the two, so it gives you a balance of both. Now, there are those that say the Fortuner is uncomfortable on our kinds of roads, and that it can be very bumpy. And that is true if you're driving solo or you only have 1 or even just 2 passengers. Remember, this is a vehicle meant to carry 7, and they have to beef up the suspension to be able to manage that perfectly. And I think Toyota did a good job with that, because even when fully loaded, well, the Fortuner won't look like it's ready to take off, like that. There's a little bit more weight to the steering, but I like it that way. This is still a hydraulic unit, which is proper for a vehicle like this. In terms of handling, it really is improved, but the biggest one perhaps is the braking. I remember reviewing the Fortuner back in 2016, and when I was braking moderately for a corner, I remember the stability control light flashing. And that's because the brakes in front were overpowering the brakes in the back. So it's really, really nose diving. It's causing the rear to go light, which is very, very weird. In the new Fortuner, Toyota addressed a lot of those issues, particularly when it comes to the braking. So instead of disc brakes in front and drums in the back, this one is all discs all around, and all are vented, which is pretty nice. Now, the Fortuner isn't really made for handling that kind of driving. And that's okay. I'm happy to have it be like this right now, particularly in traffic. But here's the weird thing though. Over in Thailand, the twin of the LTD, which is the Legender, well, it has a different suspension compared to this one. Because we have a standard suspension setup, but the one in Thailand, it has sport springs and sport shocks, which is quite neat. But nevertheless, if they put that here, that might seem a bit bumpy, but it would have been nice if there was an option to have that in this model. Now, finally, we have some open space. So, if you punch the throttle, response actually is pretty good. Right now I'm in sport mode, and it really does go. You do feel the extra torque, but also keep in mind that there is a bit more weight in this vehicle because they added so many features to make it better, particularly the motorized tailgate. Those things add weight. And even when I was lifting the hood to open up the engine bay, that hood is actually pretty heavy. But what's more important with the Fortuner really is the fuel economy. Toyota says it's a 5% improvement with the new engine of the Fortuner. Sorry, the upgraded engine of the Fortuner. So it's 5% there, but in terms of real world numbers, we were getting 8.8 kilometers per liter in the city. On the highway, you can expect maybe 13 to 13 and a half. If you notice, we did not take the Fortuner LTD off-road, and there are two reasons. The first one is, well, quarantine. Hello, fellow inmates. ECQ Season 3 is upon us, and that means checkpoints to the normal places we go to where we film cars up in the mountains and up in the hills. The second is that I don't think a Fortuner LTD customer will take their vehicle off-road anyway. I mean, yes, it does have the 4x4 dial with 4x4 high and 4x4 low, has hill descent control, hill start assist control, and even a rear differential lock, which is pretty useful. But given how the bumper looks and how actually the whole vehicle looks, I'm not really sure they're going to be doing a lot of trailing in a vehicle such as this. Even when you look at the variant range of the Fortuner, this is the only 4x4 model. There is no other model that has this kind of drivetrain. The rest are 4x2. There is no version of the Fortuner in a lower grade 4x4 where a customer will not think twice about removing the bumper and then putting on a steel bumper or a bull bar of their choice for off-roading. Toyota is focusing on 4x2 because that is where the market is, that is where their strengths lie, and that's why we are a bit of a conundrum. This Fortuner LTD is at $2.414 million. That is actually quite pricey even when compared to the Mitsubishi Montero Sport GT 4-wheel drive, which at $2.3 million, we already think it's quite pricey. That is what we call prestige pricing. And Toyota is doing it very well because they are the market leader. What they're saying to the rest of their competitors, catch us if you can. Now, if you're after a value Toyota Fortuner, I suggest you look at the 4x2Q, which is a lot less than the LTD. With a different look, it loses a few features, but it still has the same, more powerful engine. And that is also why we see a lot more of the Q models on our roads, while the Fortuner LTD, well, it's more of once in a blue moon. But then again, that kind of exclusivity has its own appeal. Guys, this is Vince of AutoIndustriya. Thank you for watching, and I do apologize for the length of my videos. I'm trying to give you as much detail as I can with the vehicles we review. But if you want to know more and if you want to ask for more, let us know in the comments below, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And please do like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel.